on. But we had to go live, otherwise we will lose our spot. But glad that hey, Eddie's here, man. Like, who else? Who else do we need? So we are on live, and glad that you are able to join us. Hey, see, they're coming in one by one.
Coming in one by one.
Right here. All right, Dre. Dre's in the house. There we go. There we go. There we go.
Pray for me. Just pray for me. That's all I'm asking for.
Press the link. You guys make it. I got like about 4 baseball caps out there, man. I'm gonna put my baseball cap on, man.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
I'm good, man. And yourself?
There we go.
Good, man.
The doctor.
Woo!
Eddie.
Reverend Dr. Bishop.
There we go. There we go.
I'm telling you, it's been a while, Elder. It's been a while. Good to see your face.
Yes,
Good
sir.
to see your face.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
So if you guys want to go ahead before we start, just to share it on your own page, it's coming through OCSDA Ministries, Connect Ministries. And just forward it out. But we are here. Thank you so much for joining us. Those who are tuning in online, we are here. We're talking about fatherhood. Right here in North America was Father's Day. And it was a beautiful day here in Toronto. It was a beautiful day here in Toronto. And no doubt, during this time of COVID and everything else, it was good to just get out and enjoy the sun, enjoy it with family. But we're here just talking about fatherhood and what that means and what that means to us, and as the world is in this pandemic type of season, as well as the injustices that are happening. What does Father's Day look like? What does Father's Day look like? So we're just here just for the conversations. I do see Martin in here. He is the last piece to this puzzle. So he is joining us. Good to have you, Pastor Perez.
Yeah, man. He's in that car.
Yeah. I apologize. My errands ran a little late.
Yeah, man.
Careful as you go, preacher.
Yeah.
I love it.
How y'all doing?
So let's just go around real quick because I know we don't have too much time. But let's just go around real quick and just introduce each other. Just say a little bit about where you're tuning in from, and maybe even your family. And since it is Father's Day and your children, just go ahead and put it all out there.
Well, I'm next to you on the screen, so I'll just go.
That's it. Let's go clockwise.
I am tuning in from tomorrow.
All right.
I am tuning in from Tuesday morning. I'm here in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I am the father to a beautiful 16-year-old girl, Ria. I am the husband of 27 years to a wonderful wife. I'm putting my 27 years in because I know once Elder Lawrence gets in, he's just going to put decades on all of us. He's just going to put decades. So I'm getting my little 27 in right now.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed to be a girl dad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blessed to be a father, period. I'm
Yeah.
blessed to be a girl dad. And yeah, that's me. I'm going to pass the ball over to Andre. He's on
man. I'm on this side, so I'm next. Yeah. I'm here, married, not for as long as Eddie's been married, but I've been married for long enough to know that marriage is a good thing.
Yes,
we got 3 girls and 1 boy in this house, and it's a whole lot. It's summer vacation, and so you already know the house is already getting destroyed, and it's only day 1. So I'm so grateful to be in this office away from whatever they're doing upstairs right now. So thanks, Orlando, for having me on here with you guys, and Pastor Eddie. It's so good to see you, man. Every time I see you, you just have me like cheesing. It's like a bromance or something. Yeah. So now I'm passing it down to Pastor Lawrence.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm delighted to be here, Eddie. I'm glad to see Eddie. I've known Eddie before for a long time.
Yeah, so now I'm passing it down to Pastor Lawrence.
Yeah, well, so I am married. We've been married now for 46 years, Eddie. 46 years this year. So we have.
There's a lot of echoing.
Yeah, well,
That's me.
Oh, that's you. Okay.
That's me.
So,
Okay.
So we have.
I'm sharing it to my timeline. Forgive me.
Yeah, we have four
No, you're
children.
okay.
4 children. We have three girls, one boy. We have 2 grandchildren, and 1 son-in-law. You know, and so we're thankful. And after 46 years of marriage,
Oh!
Pastor Lawrence had to look directly into the camera and say that sternly, like he did not stutter. He did not stutter.
I knew Eddie before he was born.
Yeah.
And we're thankful for, you know, I must give a shout out to Antonia, I say the youngest, but she's the last born of the twins. So she's doing a project right now in Toronto, and I understand she's gonna be interviewed by the TV sometime today or tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
They're doing to help people who are, you know, minorities and so on, who need food and so forth, and she's working that. So shout out for our young daughter there, Antonia, for that. But we're thankful for being a part of this, and I hope that we share some interesting things as fathers. Yes, Martin, it's over to you.
All right, guys. Well, happy to be here. Hello to everyone. Sorry, I was running some errands and we ran a little late, but yeah, I'm a father of 3 kids, 10, 8, and 2. And yeah, it's great. They make me proud to be a dad, and it's just you know, experiencing being a father gives me a new sense of what it is to be a son of God. You know, it gives me a different perspective. So yeah, it's been a huge blessing. This September, I'll be married for 20 years. Wonderful wife.
Hey.
Yeah, 20 years. So yeah, the big 2-0. Yeah,
20 years already, Martin. Man, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just wanted to note one thing. I didn't start getting old till I started having kids. All this gray hair to my kids.
As you would notice that every picture that is on here has gray hair. So, you know, it just comes with the territory. Just comes with the territory.
Andre isn't telling the full truth. We got gray when we had kids and we had churches.
Yeah, thank you. Tell the truth. Let's not talk about fatherhood. Let's talk about church.
Glad to have you all with us. My name is Orlando, and yeah, right here in Toronto with my family, and been married for almost 15 years. So next week will actually be on July 3rd. I had to get the date right. July 3rd. Yes, married for 15 years. And we have 3 boys. One is 13, just finished up from elementary, going into high school. And the second one is going into 7th grade. And the youngest one is going into, you know, his senior of high school. He thinks he's that old, but, you know, there's a lot of good things that we can get out of this conversation today, and just to bring everyone on and just kind of share, you know, their own journey. As you have heard, many of us have been married for many different years, and some of our kids, some of them are still young, some of them are older, some of them are married. And so, you know, we're hoping just to get a different perspective from each person as to what fatherhood looks like for them in the different stages of life, and some of the things that we can share with you here today. So, you know, I just want to kind of open it up, you know, to the group that is here today as we talk about fatherhood. What are some things that you did not know before having children? That just opened up your mind and opened up your world to a new, different season. What were some of the things, you know, prior to having children that you may have had in your mind before you had kids? What was your perception? What was your perspective?
I didn't realize what my mom went through. I really didn't realize what my mom went through until I became a father. You know, even in the simple things, you know, Rhea is a real great conversationalist. And she would talk when she was young, talk. And I used to look at her and I said, Rhea, isn't your mouth tired? And I remember the first time I said it, and I went, because my mom used to say that to me all the time. She used to look at me, talk, and she said, boy, isn't your mouth tired? You know, and I didn't realize as parents how much your children repeat themselves again. You repeat yourself in your kids. You know what I mean? That was the one thing that actually really did surprise me and shock me. You know, I understood how patient God was with me when I had to figure out how much I give patience to this child. You know what I mean? I remember when Rhea once she cut her eyelashes, and in our family we have these eyelashes that come out and they fold all the way over. You know what I mean? Mine don't do that much now because they're like 50. They're 55-year-old eyelashes, and in the end they're kind of get tired. You know what I mean? But I remember Rhea cut her eyelashes, and I was just mad at that. And I remember sitting down. It was a Friday that I found out. I sat down Sabbath trying to write this sermon in my office, just thinking, why are you so mad? Why are you so angry with this girl? She was only like about 3 years old. And then it dawned on me, and I got weepy. I was like, oh my gosh, I used to do that same kind of foolishness when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, my child is cursed. Lord, save my child. You know, and I remember she coming in and hugged me, and she said, Daddy, they're going to grow back. They'll grow back. You know. So I think for me that was the one that real shocked me, just how much we repeat ourselves again in our
What about everyone else? What are some things that you have seen that you have had that epiphany, you've had that moment where you're like, oh my goodness, I've become my parents. You know, so just to give you an example of I'm driving with my oldest son, and so he has the rights now, or he asked, like, can I play my music? So he started to, you know, put his music on and all that sort of stuff. And then I started to hear, I was like, man, that's some Eminem joint, you know, just you know. and then I'm like, hey, what are you listening to? You know, and he says, Dad, that's Eminem. And I went, do you know? Because I know exactly what the lyrics are supposed to be. You know? But you know, this is the clean version, so to speak, right? And he goes, Dad, it's okay, it's the clean version. And I'm like, no. But you know, but now I'm going back and I'm like, you know, you shouldn't listen to that music. You got to be careful with those things going in. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have just become my parents.
You know, it's interesting. My perspective on parenting over the last little while, since COVID, we've been eating food like there's no tomorrow. So we had to introduce this whole exercise regiment. And I won't tell you what time we've been going bike riding and just going for little walks and stuff with the family and so on and so forth. But one of the things, because I may have one of the young ones in this group, my son, he's 7 years of age, and this is his first solid year riding his bike properly.
Wow.
And watching him fall off the bike and not being able to catch him because I'm riding my own bike, I realized that parenting happens so quickly. You know, when he was a baby, he's the only boy, baby boy in this family. We would catch him, we would carry him. He's the one that took the longest to walk. But now I'm watching another stage of development, and I have mixed emotions because I know that the best is yet to come. But at the same time, I never thought that I would get sad watching us move out of this part of life where they're completely dependent on us, and now watching them beginning to spread their wings and fly. I think I'm enjoying it, but I'm becoming sad because, you know, it also means we're getting older too. Right. And we will begin to see some of the new phases of life, fathering and parenting happen as well. That's my experience.
What about you, Pastor Perez?
I'm just you know, I'm nodding in in agreement because it all sounds familiar what you guys are saying, and I really am turning into my father. You know, when I was a kid, you know, my relationship with him was pretty strained growing up. Um, and so I resented a lot of his hardness, a lot of his strictness, and he really tried to teach me the value of hard work. And it's not until now that I'm trying to teach my boys some integrity and to learn to be hard workers and stuff that I'm starting to see. It's like, hey, he was trying to teach me something, you know, and that blows me away because you know the farthest thing that I wanted to do was become like my father. But all through the time, you know, he made his mistakes and he did a lot of stuff, but he was still trying in his own way, you know, and to reflect on that now that I'm trying to teach my boys some values, it's just blowing me, it blows me away, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pastor Lawrence. I know that you're on. I don't know if you're looking directly at us or you're frozen. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, yes.
There he is.
So we are still talking about some of the things that you know, when we started to have children, it finally dawned on us, you know, what our parents were trying to do. And as we started to parent, we now became our parents to our children, in that we were starting to mimic the same things that we had said. What are some of the things that you know, had gone through?
I think he's frozen.
Different versions of his frozen self.
Yes.
Just jumping on what Martin said.
Yeah.
You know, because I never grew up with my father. I never grew up with my father at all. He left he left when I was young. And so one thing I always said was I was never going to become my father. And then in conversations with my mom, when I turned 50 and she turned 90 in the same year, I was recording her story, and she would tell me stories about him in their young years, in their early 20s when they were married.
Yeah.
And I was literally, I am my father. And it gutted me because some of the stories weren't good. You know? For me, as a parent, because I never grew with him as a parent, I don't know what he was like as a parent, but in terms of his personality and everything. And so for me, I've kind of come to the understanding that we are our parents, but I think we get to decide in our generation what version of our parents we're going to be. You know what I mean?
If I could say this to you, Pastor Eddie, I did get to grow up with my parents, did get to grow up with my father. And I'll tell you, one of the major lessons that I've learned is that as much as I feel as though I've accomplished in life, I have more of a respect for my parents, for my father. They came from Jamaica. And when they came here, they came with absolutely nothing. And I watched them work hard and trust in the Lord and all of that other stuff. And now I realize, man, like part of this journey is saying, you know, you always say that you're going to do this and that and the other. But when you begin to live life, you realize that life, especially being a man, especially being a black man, it's not as simple as you thought it was. You watch your parents get up, you watch your father get up and go to work every day and come back. But it's not until you get up and go to work every day, even when you don't want to, that you realize the awesome responsibility of being a father, a husband, a human being, a Christian. You can call it whatever you want to. This journey is not easy. It takes discipline, and it takes being consistent in everything in order to just keep moving forward.
I agree with you 110%. I do know that he had a strong work ethic, and I know within my mom had the very same work ethic. You know, and she instilled that within us and within me specifically when I was a kid from very early. So there is a lot that rolled over. There is a lot that rolled over.
I think there's a lot that we didn't understand when we were growing up. And you know, as I'm teaching my boys, in the back of my mind, I'm now coming full circle with the whole, you know, parenting and understanding where my parents came from when they taught us certain things. You don't understand it now, but you'll understand it later I think that's some of the difficulty in raising kids, because you want them to get it now. You want them to get it right. You want them to understand why you're doing what you're doing. But usually it's not until it comes full circle, maybe in their lifetime, in having children, that things will start to make sense. Dr. Lawrence, glad you're back.
Yeah, I'm hearing you now. I switched over to my phone and I took off the iPad, so I'm hearing you much clearer.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think when I look back over growing up as a boy, I mean, I'm hearing you talking about work ethic. I think I really caught a lot of that from both mother and father when it comes to working hard. And when I realized that my mother at an early age, when I was like 8 or 9, was encouraging my father to take me with him when he went to. He was a tailor, so he would be, making suits and trousers and other things, or when he went to the farm, to cut bananas and so on. And my mother said, "Take him with you." And I, okay. And after a while, he did take me with him, and I learned quite a bit from that kind of work ethic, watching men work.
Yeah.
Watching men organize work. Watching men cooperate with each other to see how to get work done. I think that was one of the beauties of early growing up.
Yeah.
In my later years, I didn't have a father because my father died when I was 15, going on to 16. So all the things that I learned before that were there to shape me. But I think I also want to say this, that I learned a lot more than from my dad because of her own work ethic. And I remember when I used to my first job, and some days when it was cold and I would say, well, I'm gonna call in sick. And I would say, don't call sickness upon yourself, because one day you might really be sick. So you better make sure you just go to work when you can. When you're sick, that's a different excuse. So I learned that I don't just be sick. I don't, don't say wolf, because one will be at your door. So some of those things I think I think I heard one of my daughters some time ago, and that way of working she's got it from her dad. Though is overworking.
I think we're losing him.
Pastor's breaking up there. He must be on a Wi-Fi. Totally went off. Went off.
That 3G went to 2G.
Andre, we just need to pass the offering plate around. All right, guys. Just we'll get him.
We got to pull together and get him some decent Wi-Fi.
You're in the car, man, and you better drive around there and give him some Wi-Fi, man.
Oh, there, he's back on. Let me. There we go. Doc, you all right there, Doc? I think he's frozen again. I think he's frozen.
Again. Babylon after I fight we.
So we're talking about work ethic of our parents. We're talking about just the way that they raised us, and I've heard many times of the West Indian type of raising and the love, that I can't remember what you called it, Eddie. But we would get our licks, from our parents, and what do you call that? West Indian what?
We just call it straight beat.
I thought there was another term for it, man. No. Beats, man. No. Let's just go with beats. And
let's just call it what it is.
It's one of those things, man. I mean, in the Polynesian community, you just, it's just one of those things we laughed at.
Same as us.
You got your beats, man.
Yeah.
And you come to school, and it just became something where we just talked about, as boys at school, we would laugh about it, then we would shake it off. I know that today, you know, that type of growing, of rearing your children, you know, you can't do, you know, in today's society. But you know, when we look at that type of discipline, let's just put it there, that type of discipline, and you know, there are a lot of things that come with it. Like Martin had said, you know, there's that strained relationship that sometimes comes in as well, you know, because of it. How do we navigate those things as we now pick and choose what we want to pass on to our kids? And, you know, not just in discipline, but in, you know, the many things, you know, family systems. And I know you guys are familiar with family systems, and Bowen talks about a lot about it in his theory, you know, that we are made up of systems that we're interconnected with our families. And we're passing on these systems to the next generation. And so sometimes they leak through, you know, through our own, if we don't really look at it and we don't really deal with it. But if we do see those things where we want to pick and choose the best of our parents, so that we can pass them on to our children, so that they're able to grow up as well. And I think that that's part of fatherhood, that we look at ourselves and we see those things, you know, in our own lives. And then we're able to pass on those things that we want to pass on and be intentional to our kids. So what are some of those things as we look at fatherhood and the looking at ourselves and making sure that we take care of that first?
Well, I think
yeah, go ahead, Pastor.
No, forgive me, Martin. I'll remember what I was going to say. You go.
Oh, okay. Thanks. No, I was just gonna say that part of disciplining kids is putting in the work yourself and committing to it, being consistent. That's one thing that I learned. To do a little bit different from my parents is to be consistent, and two, show your kids some dignity, you know, and explain to them exactly why, and being consistent with that, because a lot of times, you know, out of emotion or whatever, frustration, we may dole out some sort of consequence or punishment or whatever you want to call it, and not really take the time to invest in them at that point. If you don't mind, I'm going to tell you a quick story. My middle boy, he went through a period of time where he was sneaking his tablet, you know, into bed at night, staying up really late, watching who knows what, which I did not appreciate. And so I told him, I'm like, look, you can't do this. You have to get permission. And if I say no, you have to accept that. Well, it kept going on. And one night, I'm passing by his bedroom, and I see in the crack there's a little light, and he's got it. And I said, you know what? That's it. I gave you enough warnings. I told you why I don't want you to watch these things at night. And I'm really disappointed. So I took the tablet and I broke it in half. Now I don't know if it was the right thing.
Great Bruce Lee type.
Never did that.
Old school.
And he spent a whole year without a tablet. But later on, he changed his behavior and everything. He even got an award for integrity at school. I'm like, wow, this kid really turned it around.
That's
but
right.
The hard part is, you know, it broke my heart to do that, but I just needed him to know that there was consequences, and even though I felt bad, I had to go through with it. I had to, because I couldn't let him continue that behavior, and then it feeds into other things in his life. And it's one of the craziest things I've ever done. But I felt in the moment that I needed to show him, how serious it was for him to be sneaking around, lying to me, and doing things he wasn't supposed to, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'll be judged at some point. You know, that was too harsh, but
no judgment at all. It's a judgment call you made.
The funny thing is, I know Rhea is a real Hypolite, so I know what comes with that. And then Rhea is a real Somerville, so I know that comes with that. That's my side and her side of the family. And so from a very early age, it was important for both of us to understand when we say no, no isn't anything else but no. And so that she could have that boundary, you know what I mean? And I understand that because I understood what it meant for me growing up and not understanding the necessity of that word no, and trusting, and me not trusting my mum's wisdom at the time, or trusting my mum's, you know, because my mum obviously saw us and she knew what was in us. And so for me, I understand fully like what you're talking about. And so for me, all the disciplining really for Rhea ended when Rhea was around about 5 years old. Serious. After that, I just needed to just talk. And you know, I mastered my mother's like
Yeah. Come on.
And then that was enough, you know. Mom, because my mum was raising us on her own, my mum would, her one statement used to be, "Let me speak again."
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, we heard that one too.
Listen, brother, when you hear that one, anyway, let me talk again. But my mum would be like, "Let me speak again." And then that was it. And I think it's kind of stood her in good. It stood her in good stead, you know. We had the same thing with the phone, and I never broke it. What I did, Martin, was I put it in a place in the house.
Yeah.
And I left it there for months. Like, I dare you to touch it. Like literally, she would pass it every day, and just leave it. Just know, like, no is no, and so that she understands the value of yes, and then she understands the responsibility of yes, you know, and then also no not being a punishment, no actually being a boundary, but there's a lot of distance between the no and the boundary, you know, for kids they're always like, why are you putting this boundary in front of me? I'm like, how far is the boundary? The boundary is like 100 miles away. Like, work with the space in between. Work with the space in between. So like that's been my journey. You know, obviously none of us have the experience of Elder Lawrence with his 40-something years and his grown children, but you know, these are our meager offerings.
I think the hardest part about parenting, and I like the way that we've transitioned in this conversation, is understanding that you really have to take the time with every single one of your kids in a different kind of way. Like, I'm an introvert. People don't believe that because I'm always talking, but I'm an introvert. So my preference would just be to say something once and not have to come back to it because, you know, you want to be in your own self. But as time has gone along, understanding that everybody's personality is different. One you have to talk to one time, the other, 12 times, another one 3 times. And the truth is, without the consistency in terms of parenting, you can really do some serious damage, unintended damage. And so from my perspective as a father, probably the most difficult thing is giving each child the time that they require. That has been hard for me. And especially, I mean, we're all pastors online here. There's different seasons where you want to get stuff done at church. If you're doing your own personal development, you got stuff to do at school. You got a marriage that you got to navigate. And then you've got all of these different individuals who don't understand because they're not at that stage of life. But they still expect that you're going to give every single one of them the time that they have in their mind that they need. For me, that has been a challenge. That is not easy because, the ones that are more compliant, it's easy. You tell them what it is, and they naturally respond. But for the ones that are not compliant, now you got to spend all of this additional time. And for me, let me just keep it real. That has probably been the hardest thing. And as they're getting older now, you're beginning to see that for some where you didn't get to spend the time, you now have to find a way to do catch up before they're all gone and you no longer have them in your space to really pour that kind of consistent love into them. So that's my experience.
Errol Lawrence, you are back. Good to have you.
Eddie, Pastor Perry. Pastor Perry, when his children were small, he said that somebody said to him in church one day, "Your children are angels." And he thought to himself, well, there are two kinds of angels. There's the fallen one and the unfallen one. And he wasn't sure that he could classify his children as unfallen. Now, some people want us to think that our children should be unfallen angels, right? But we have to remember that they're children first and foremost before they become pastors, kids, or anything else. They're children, and I've always found that we have to deal with that as we go through ministry, in particular, as parents. The other thing too is that sometimes we are hard on our children, harder on them, and on our spouses too, than we are with others, because we always want to be early for church. We want to make sure we're ready for this, and we push and we push and we push, and so we can provoke our children to wrath. As the Bible says, we shouldn't do that. But sometimes we do that because of how we make them feel that they have to be so different from other people. I think one of the best things I've learned in rearing children as a pastor's kid or a pastor's child, we have to let them know that they can just run around the church too. They can have free reign to do whatever they want to do. Within reason. They've got to behave themselves, yes, but they can't be so restricted that they always have to sit down beside mommy and daddy all the time. The other thing too is that they must develop friendships, and our children have developed lots of friendships in the churches that they've been. So, and these are lifelong friends, because sometimes you're taught as a pastor you shouldn't have friends. You should just be this pastor, and I think that's one of the things. So, as a father, I've had to learn to allow the children to be children, and I've also had to learn to be a husband and a father, and not to be so heavy on the pastor side that you make the children. That's all you are. The church becomes the other wife, and they're not counted in this. If I had to relive ministry, I would do so many things differently when it comes to being a father.
And I think we're all pastors on here. Actually, I know that we're all pastors on here. So there is that expectation that is on our children, and undue expectations upon our families, whether it be our spouse or whether it be our children, to behave and act in a certain way. I think we have heard many times about what PKs, the negative connotation that is added upon them. And it is sad that there are many that may not be in church. It may not be that they're not in a relationship with Jesus, but they're just not in church. But I do see that there is a new wave that is coming through. There is a new understanding of pastors and how they are able to balance and navigate these expectations that are put on pastors and their families. And some of it is what Pastor Lawrence had mentioned, where you just let your kids, be part of the fabric of that church. And sometimes it means, being part of the kids and just running around. Sometimes it means just to, if they're not happy, for whatever reason, you have to drop everything. So there is that new type of thing. What would you give some advice to pastors that may be trying to balance all of this, in today's life?
I remember hearing a pastor preach a sermon. It was actually when we was in seminary, and we was all doing biblical preaching. We all had to preach out of First and Second Samuel. Find the stories in First and Second Samuel. This one guy preached about King David, and he did it within the context. He framed it within watching the credits in the cinema. Like, we sometimes never watch the credits, but the credits tell a different story. And he talked about David at the beginning of his ministry, and they ran the credits on who was surrounding him. And he's surrounded by just his sons and his family. And then in the middle of his reign, they ran the credits, and he's surrounded with fewer of his children and and then officials. Then they ran the credits at the end of his reign. And all David is surrounded by are just people that he puts on a list and tells him, kill all these people if you want to have a good reign. And I never forgot what he said. He said, what does it profit us as ministers if we build the kingdom of God, and when the final credits are run, none of our children are with us? And believe me, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And so I think I would tell ministers, your children are your first ministry.
Mm-hmm.
The church employs you, but the kingdom calls you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we are not called to sacrifice our children to our employer.
Right.
Because,
True.
yeah, that is not part of our calling. When I first came here to Australia, I would hear some of the older ministers, the retired ones, talking about ministry to encourage us and talking about sacrifice. And I would hear, and a lot of them had lots of families. And they would talk with almost pride, you know. In those early days, we big families with all the moves, and you know, we'd often say, which one of our children are we going to sacrifice for the work? I mean, what? Like,
Yeah.
none of them. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I think there was one story about that, and God said, Abraham, don't kill the child. I ain't never, you know, and I think what I would say to ministers is to understand that our family is our first congregation. Our family is our first congregation. No matter how much we build the kingdom of God, in the final analysis, God is going to say, "Where are your kids?"
Right.
Yeah, where are your kids? And I think that we have to truly understand that and give that first ministry, give that first ministry in that space. You know, and don't allow them, especially at an early age, don't allow them to live under the pressure, like Elder Lawrence was saying. Don't allow them to live under the pressure of other people's expectations of what they should be.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. Go ahead, Elder Lawrence.
Yeah, I wanted to just say something. I guess you can hear me better than I can hear. I love that quote Eddie just made about, you know, the church employs you, but the kingdom calls you. That's worth writing down. Because I think sometimes we forget our calling. Who calls? No, and I say that because, you know, whenever we are employed and we're working for, you know, an organization, we tend to be very loyal. We try to do all we can to give our best to the organization, and we forget that we don't want to enter the kingdom of heaven without our families. So we have to do everything possible to see that we work with them so they can be in the kingdom. I had the privilege of baptizing all four of our children. The last two, you know, Anthony and Antonio, who were twins, when they were baptized, I was not pastoring then, I was teaching. And I said to the pastor of the campus, I want my wife to come in the pool because I think she has done more to help them to be ready for baptism than I've done. And that was a privilege that, you know, to have my wife come and stand in the while I baptized the children. And I think we have to give a lot of credit to our wives, and if we're women, you know, to our spouses who are there helping to bring the children up in the fear and the nurture and the knowledge of God. Because when you think about it, so much pressure is put on our children to be good, you know, to be holy and to be righteous, because you're the pastor's kid. How could you do that? And if we don't give them the support they need, then they could just slip away. And you know, my joy and my pleasure is to see that we can have our children in the kingdom. Now, I must add that I never thought that I'd have a child who would follow my footsteps in ministry. But thank God, you know, our daughter Michaela is pastoring in Georgia. You know, Anthony is there as organist or pianist and helping in his church. You know, Abigail is an elder in her church there where she is. Antonia, well, she's doing what I told her yesterday. You know, Matthew 25. You know, what you do for the least as you do it is precious in His sight. So I'm thinking when I look at what they're doing, I think, well, somewhere along the line, they've picked up some of the things that they've learned in church, learned from the Bible, learned from worship at home, learned from their parents and from their friends who are Christians. So we have to also make sure that we open them up to other influences that are good, so they can learn from those as well. That's why when we invite people to our homes, we go out with people, we want to make sure it's the best company that our children can keep. So they will learn from those. They can even have mentors from those people, and in turn they become mentors of others as well.
Awesome. Just transitioning the conversation over. I know that a lot of times we are talking about absent fathers, whether it be in our homes. And I know that Eddie had, kind of alluded to, his own family and shared the experiences. So, our moms are really left to raise as being fathers and mothers in the home. But how do we balance? And being absent doesn't necessarily only mean physical, right? It could also be busy in the home, that you're not present mentally, in the home. And a lot of what we do as pastors, we're at church, but we're also working at home as well. So how do we balance all of that so that we don't become that absent father in the home when everyone else is doing something else, and we're stuck trying to prepare the sermon, or we're stuck trying to do the work, that the so-called work? How do we balance all of that?
Martin, you're next. I'll go after you.
Yeah, it's definitely a conscientious thing. You have to be aware, because it's so easy to get wrapped up into things, and before you know it, 1, 2, 3 hours pass by, right? And you hear your kids running back and forth in the hall or in the next room playing around, but if you don't make the effort to stop and just drop, then you're gonna miss those moments. And in order for you to really be there, you have to make that choice to pour into your kid.
For me, I kind of had to learn the hard way. I'm probably the most hard of hearing of this entire group, and I learned through this. There was a time where, just based on where I was in ministry, I was just always on the go. And one day I was about to leave the house, and one of my kids were like, "If you go now, will we see you in the morning?" Because, of course, they have different hours because they're in school. So when you come home, often they're sleeping. And I looked into their eyes and I saw this pain. And that was the last day. And I started to really put things into its perspective. Because the reality is, when we as pastors are out pastoring, very few people will call and check on our kids while we're checking on their families. And I'm not saying that they have to have that as a requirement. I mean, we are pastors, I get it. But the reality is, very few people will ever say, "I wonder how their children are doing," while he or she, because we have women that are in ministry also with the same type of dynamic, how are their families doing? And so I often use as a gauge, because I know that there are different times, because I'm very, we talked about it earlier in this conversation, I'm a works person. For me, I like to accomplish things. I want to be able to say that this was the goal for the day, and I've been able to follow through on it. That check that off and keep it moving. But these days, what I'm trying to hear more of is, what are we going to do next? I mean, COVID. Let me just keep it real. As much as it has destroyed the planet, there's a lot of people that have been impacted, lots of sick people, etc. COVID has allowed my family over these last 3.5 months to spend more time together than I think we ever have been able to do. And now that I know what that feels like, board games and Sabbath meals together and riding the bikes, I mean, being able to do all of that consistently over the last couple of months has now recentered me. I mean, I get it. As a pastor, you still got to get your work done. Yes, the Lord has called us to do ministry, and I agree with that. However, balance. I think that's what I'm coming out of this COVID thing, understanding a little bit more now. Balance is important. It's okay to say no for the sake of being a part of your family and being there, so that you're not hearing the stories after the event is over. They're telling, "Oh, do you know what we did?" No. I want to be a part of history as well. I want it to be said that Daddy was there when we were doing all of these different things.
I know Pastor Lawrence is with us. I know he may have to jump off, and as he has another meeting to attend to. So feel free to jump in, Doc, if this is your final statement here? Maybe he'll jump. He'll jump on later. Andre, just pass the offering through, please. Just.
I already told you what we're gonna do. We're all gonna give him one of our G's.
Whatever.
Give him a G, right? We'll get him on 6G.
So we really only have like 10 to 15 minutes in this conversation. I did speak about absent fathers, and it seems to be a topic that comes on over and over again. It is what the media has, has some sort of an obsession on it, especially in the Black community. As we look at some of the statistics around it, and a lot of the times where we have absent fathers, whether they are 70% of those who are in prison or incarcerated come from fatherless homes. There are statistics that it comes to education and those sorts of things as well. How do we help those who are in that family system, so to speak? And I probably we're lending more to Eddie and how he was able to grow up and get that influence, that male influence in his life. But how can we help those that are in that type of system right now?
Funny enough, I was having the same conversation yesterday on a Instagram live conversation, and I think there is a deep responsibility that we all have as fathers. That if we're raising our kids and we're figuring out what it is, that we actually come together. We come together as fathers and we talk. We come together and we share and we bring young men into our space. Not so much to give them pearls of wisdom, but just to listen, let them sit in our presence and just listen to us talk. Listen to us talk about the struggle. Listen to us navigate so that we could be significant male models around them. I am grateful that God made promises to mom and he kept the promises to mom. The promises that he made to mom when my dad left was, I will be a husband to you. I will be a father to the children. I will take away the reproach from your name, out of Isaiah 44 and 45. So he kept it. So now in retrospect, looking back, I realize that at very difficult parts in my life, God just sent significant male figures into my life.
Yeah.
In the places that I was taken out of the home because of my juvenile delinquency and offending as a juvenile and placed in community home schools. And then I met my engineering teacher, Mr. German, and he remained in my life until he died of cancer, like 8-9, about 9-10 years ago. He just remained in my life. He was just a consistent person in that space. And he just consistently, he has done that. I remember when I came to get married, and that was the time that I realized what I had missed in not having a father. And I remember quietly panicking. I think I've told you this enough times already, on Orlando. And I think I've told you this as well, Trey. And I remember panicking about a month before because I was sure I was going to fail because I just never seen the pattern. I didn't know what it was to be a husband, a father, none of those things. And I was convinced I was going to fail. And I remember the Spirit speaking to me, and I clearly heard God asking me, what did you deserve to see? Never forget it. He said, Eddie, what did you deserve to see? And I told him what I felt I deserved to see. And then he said, clearly said, marry the girl, and I will teach you to do that as you go on. I will send people around you that will model it. I will send dysfunctional people around you that will model what not to be. But as long as you're willing to stay in that space with Yvonne, I will teach you how to be a husband. And when children come, I will teach you how to be a father. So I feel like for us, we have to form these groups where more and more we have to come together as men. We have to come together as fathers. We have to look for young men, make ourselves available, because I honestly do believe that we have to make ourselves available, and so that they will come and ask us, would you mentor me? It's one thing you walking up to somebody and saying, I want to mentor you. They're like, what? But I think, you know, we have to make ourselves available so that they ask, because once they ask, they're giving us permission to have the difficult conversations with them and to those truths and to journey with them. And I think that that's what we have to do. Just because our fathers weren't there, it doesn't mean that we can't break that cycle. Just because we didn't see it, it doesn't mean we can't be it.
Yeah.
Man, just because we didn't see it, it doesn't mean that we can't be it. Whether we're fathers that grew up, whether we're men that grew up with no fathers, or like the other thing that you said, Orlando, whether you're children who grew up with a father in your house, but he might as well not have been there because he was just never present.
Yep.
Yeah, he was there as a physical body, but all the things we needed from him, you know, he put food on the table, but apart from that, I mean, you know, there was no, you know, and just because we didn't see it, it doesn't mean we can't be it. Just because we grew up around it, it doesn't mean we have to repeat it. We have to teach men that you can actually change. You can actually change that narrative. You can break the narrative and be what you deserve and be what you deserve to see.
Yep. Adol Lawrence, I know that you're about to leave, but go ahead. We'll give it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Eddie. I didn't hear everything, and I'm having problems with my maybe, but it's
1G. 1G.
It's a problem. So, but here's a couple of things because I have to go in a minute. You know, I saw this on a bus or taxi some years ago, which says, "To be a man is not easy," and I put it to say the same thing about to be a pastor is not easy, to be a father is not easy. So, how do I get it to be a little easier? And I found that because I grew up from the age of 15, turned 16, onto where I'm now without a father. When I got married, of course, I had no father, but I had father figures. So I had, you know, cousins or uncles. I have an older brother, but I was able to get information and mentorship from older men who I looked up to and respected. And I always think about young fathers who need to talk to older men who are fathers to see how they do it, what can happen. Now, you don't do everything the other person does, but you can learn from what other people are doing, and you can allow them to mentor you through life. I developed a real close relationship with my mission president when I was in Liberia. He died last year, and I did his funeral. But over the years, as we moved together, I learned so much from him as a father and as a father figure and as a leader and so forth. So I think we need to, if we see young men in our churches or in our communities who are maybe struggling, they're going up and down in the water, bobbing here and there, reach out to them and see what we can do to help them. And then there will be at least one person that you can help to make their fatherhood that much better. And they will turn around and thank you for it. And you find that you'll do it for several people. One of the things that my wife and I did when we were just in ministry there in the old Brixton church, we used to meet with the young people at times. We meet with the parents.
That's what I did my intern.
Sometimes with the mothers and then the fathers on their own, and talk about all kinds of different things when it comes to parenting and bringing up children. Even though we were young, we were able to teach some things, and we were able to learn from the older ones as well. And I'm challenging us here, all of us on this line of pastors, and we have a wide circle that we move in all the time. We can find at least one person, maybe one dozen, that we can mentor and help them, because I believe that we need fathers in our world today who realize that it's okay to say, well, I have a child, but are you being a real dad to that child or to those children? And we can learn from our own mistakes and help them not to make the same mistakes.
Well, Orlando, if I could jump on,
go ahead,
and say this. One of the things, especially now that the whole world is talking about this systemic racism, I didn't want us to end this conversation without us talking a little bit about that, because some of the strain that we see on fathers is connected to the system. Like when you think about the fact that somebody can go to work and in 8 hours make enough money to not show up for the other 4 days, and then you have different people groups that they can't afford to miss a day. They can't even take a day off. There's no vacation time. There's no benefits. There's no whatever. I guess I'm saying that to say I've become much more sympathetic of Black fathers. I mean, we pull a salary, right? So whether you go into the church or you don't, you're getting something at the end of the month, right? And I think that for me, I'm much more patient when I evaluate why it is that some fathers stay and why some fathers go. And I'm not trying to excuse anybody's behavior. I'm just becoming more aware. You know, in my mid 40s now, I'm not so quick to make assumptions. I want to get some more data. I want to understand a little bit more about the context to somebody's life. Because sometimes when people depart, it's not always because they don't want to. I think sometimes the fear of how am I going to support my wife or my girlfriend and 4 kids, 5 kids on minimum wage. And no matter how I hustle on my job, no matter how much overtime I do, it just never seems to make ends meet. And maybe I want to say that as well as part of this conversation. And maybe this is more directed to Black men, maybe men of color. I understand. You know, I'm beginning to understand it. But you've got to try and fight through and see if there's some alternative ways to make things happen when the system won't make it happen for you. Because I don't think anybody just gets up one day and says, I don't necessarily want to take care of my seed. I think that there are a lot of external variables. And of course, you know, I have a little bit of a background in sociology, so I'm always looking at systems and how they all impact. And the reality is, it's hard to be a Black man. Let me just say that and make sure that I say it loud and clear. It's not easy. It's more than just Converse and jeans and the strut and the baggy jeans. There's so many more layers that go into being a father. And then, of course, if you don't have a father and you're still strutting and you're still not making ends meet, it's even more difficult. But to the Black man, I want to say this: keep your head up, man. I think that change is coming. As I'm watching this world erupt, fires and all, I'm also seeing something beginning to birth.
Thanks for sharing that. One of the things that I wanted to share, you know, in this whole thing of absent fathers, especially statistics that point to, you know, especially the Black community, is that it doesn't tell the whole story.
No.
And you know, statistics alone won't give you you know, what is truly happening in those situations. There are stories that are happening, and I'm reading this book. It's called The Boy Crisis. I don't know if you've ever followed. It's a book that kind of explains you know, some of the challenges that some of our young boys in our families, especially absent fathers, are going through. There is a lot more, you know, to the story. As it relates to the economics, as Andre had shared, and what makes them an absent father is based on the economics that they can supply. So if they don't have a job, therefore it's automatically assumed that they are an absent father. Whereas when you look around the country, and this is my own, you know, my own opinion and my own perception, is that when you look around, you know, whether it's the Hispanic community or whether it's the Black community or even the Polynesian community, you see that there are more fathers that are involved than they aren't involved. You understand what I'm saying? And so the media may portray this absent father concept, you know, on media, and that gets the loudest voice in the room. Yet I think what we have to do is change that whole narrative. And you do see certain groups that are starting to form up to give a different perception of fathers and how they are involved, you know, and especially in the Black community. The second thing that I wanted to share was that we, you know, as fathers, we need those mentors, we need those coaches, we need those uncles, you know, and we appreciate everything that they do. And just an example of that is I can tell my kid, and I've been telling my son, giving him advice in certain areas of life. But because he hears it from me over and over and over again, It sounds different when somebody else says it.
That's right.
Yeah. Now it's like, hey, you're saying the exact same thing as my father. My father is saying that because he's my father, but you don't have to say that. But you're saying the exact same message. And so that's where I think that, uncles and mentors and coaches, they're all there. We're all there together to raise our children. And it takes that village.
Yeah.
That mindset that we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And being pastors, we have that influence of being in churches to be able to speak. There was, Father's Day was yesterday here, and there was a young man from my previous church who's been, his life has been a roller coaster, but he texted me yesterday. And he said, Happy Father's Day. I just want to let you know that I truly appreciated you when you were here. And I appreciate you. So that for me was like, wow, that kind of put my own ministry in perspective, that when we're talking to people, we're talking to kids, it's not going over their heads, because I would probably say I thought for him it was going over his head, disinterested, but no, for him to be able to say that, and he's probably like 16, 17 years old. So even that alone, to pick up the phone and text me, it was huge for me. So that was eye-opening for me to just say that pastors, uncles, mentors, coaches, fathers, we're all in this together. It's not just your child. Your child is benefiting from everyone coming together, encouraging one another. So we also have to do the same with other people's kids as well.
Yeah. One thing that I'd like to share is that I grew up mostly in Chicago, and you guys know what it's like. You guys have heard all the stories. Just over the weekend, 90 people were shot, 12 dead, and you see that. And I see friends of my youth, gangbangers getting killed, things like that. And I think one of the biggest things, even though my dad was around, but like one of you guys said, I forgot who, he was there, but it was like it wasn't even, he was not really there. He was checked out. I still got a sense. I attribute this to my mom. I think personal accountability, and she always taught me that you're gonna get out of life what you put into it. Right. And the fact that I got out of Chicago, I got out of the U.S., and I'm here in wonderful Canada, I attribute that not only to a miracle from God, but the fact that He put a drive in me, to take responsibility and say, you know what, I want more. I want more. And if we as pastors can mentor some kids to, or some young adults or whatever, to learn to grasp onto that, I want more, then it doesn't matter what the system does, because we're going to find a way to get around it. We're going to find a way to get out, and we're going to make it. God is very gracious, and He sees that effort that we put in, and He's like, you know what, I'm going to pull this guy out. And He brought me out, and I don't know why He called me to ministry. Honestly, to this day, we still have that conversation. I'm like, remind me again, God, why you call me? But you know what? He put that thirst. He's like, you need more. You want more, and I want more out of life. And I didn't want to end up like my friends, who, knocked up girls, at a young age. They'd make fun of me. It's like, oh, I'm not going to go into what they said, but it tied them down, and they made a lot of choices that limited what limited their life. And so if we could just remember that, to teach that to the people that we mentor, I think that'd be great.
I think we take for granted as pastors our ability, even if we aren't going to start the ministry within our churches. There are so many that will come to us, and we can actually influence. We can influence. All right, this is what you're going to start. Yeah, I'm going to support it. I'm going to make sure that you get money to do it. I'm going to make sure that you get, budgets, and and that you put the right people around it. Because I think all of us, one stage or another, have benefited from the blessing of just having solid men around us. I know I have, and I know that I do. Even just in Orlando, just having that solid space, you know what I mean, that I can actually fall back on, be vulnerable with. And so the one thing that I do know is that if we do that, And if we create that space and we affirm that space and we continue to grow that space, men are going to be better. And if men are going to be better, that means they're going to be better husbands, they're going to be better leaders, they're going to be better fathers, they're going to be better people. And that's the kingdom. That's the work of the kingdom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The work of the kingdom is to build stronger, you know what I mean? They're going to be more tender fathers, they're going to be more loving, they're going to be more patient. They ain't going to fall out. They ain't going to fall away and make excuses because they know that they've got a whole group of men behind them saying, nah, you need to get back in there. You need to go again. You need to humble yourself. You need to go and say sorry. Even if it wasn't your fault, go and say sorry for the sake of peace. Sometimes you can be so right that you're just being wrong. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can be so right as a man that right now you're just being wrong. So just for the sake of love and peace and pulling it together, you go and apologize and give them the opportunity to come back off of your apology, you know. And I feel like if we can surround each other with men that will do that for us, then men are gonna be good. They're gonna be good because they want to be good, you know. And as much as, and you know, because you've had the men's conferences, and I remember being at your men's conference, Orlando. As much as men don't like to go to men's conferences, the moment they get there and they sit down, like literally within about 60 minutes, they're like, Lord have mercy, I'm so glad I'm here. Man, I needed this. You know what I mean? Whether they go there, whether they're sent there or sentenced there, they know that once they finally get there and they're in the company of men and they've been poured into and they can talk, and they're like, man, you know. So I think as pastors we can influence that. We can influence that. And we don't have to necessarily do it. We can model it. But there may be people who want to start up those groups and start up those ministries. We can support that, you know, and let them fly.
And I'm glad you said that, Eddie, because here's the reality. This conversation like this would have never happened 40 years ago, right? Based on that generation and what communication looked like. They would never have been on here admitting to flaws or sharing best parenting, fathering practices. You know, everybody was kind of in their own house doing their own thing. And basically it's like, okay, we hope that we have a good product that comes out of our kids. But I think that now, as I look at it, the more we have these conversations, and I agree with you, Pastor Eddie, the more we just keep talking, even if what we say is absolutely wrong, it still sparks another conversation. Because I'm beginning to watch young men sitting down and talking about more than just Minecraft, more than just, you know, they're having real conversations about how do you choose a girlfriend, you know, how do you set yourself up for a career, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, fine, maybe we're not hearing enough Jesus conversation yet, but they'll get there because these conversations at times are happening in spaces that are safe, where one of us might be over the shoulder and now help to steer it to show them that, yeah, that's good if you have a nice career, a nice marriage, but will you be ready?
Yeah.
You know, so
I think because on that point you made, Dre, we have to reframe it and make them understand, no, that's a Jesus conversation too.
Right. Yeah. Good.
You have to mention is, if you're talking about setting yourself up and being responsible and having a good work ethic and choosing, that's a Jesus conversation. And we have to no, these are Jesus. When we're going to talk about Jesus,
right?
We've been talking about Jesus.
Thank you.
This is a Jesus.
That. You're right. You're absolutely right, man.
So that Jesus can actually be present. You know?
And I feel like, Dre, you know, kind of like you mentioned before, our parents' focus is very different to our focus today. When they came into places, you know, for my parents, they were in New Zealand, coming from the islands. For your parents coming in here to Canada, you know, parents out in England, you know, their primary focus was work.
That's right.
Get you know, a place for a family to live. And so, you know, that was their focus, kind of like what you were saying. Everyone just kind of went into their own house, did their own thing.
That's right.
And it came together when it was worship. I feel that because our parents have done that for us, we're at a better a different level. I don't know if it's better, but it is a different level where our starting point is very different.
Yeah. I think it becomes different in each generation.
Yeah.
You know, for them, they were builders and establishing a place for us to grow, be educated, do all the stuff. But now that we're here and we're looking at the way the world is, we're looking at the way the church is, and now that we're children, now that we have children, we're like, no, we're on a different mission, and we may carry some of the same principles along with us. Well, we will carry the same principles along with us. But we practice them in totally different ways.
Yeah. And I think the longer that we actually stay in one place is the more we thrive.
Yes.
Because history isn't in a photo of somebody explaining to you what is that in the background. History is now where we've done this thing together. And so, of course, I mean, from a male perspective, as a father, as a husband, as a pastor, I always try to push for just stability. You know, like if you could just be in a place, I mean, when you look at it, it's in nature. The longer a tree is in that ground is the more likely it is to bear some kind of fruit. But when you're constantly getting uprooted and whatever, you may plant something, but that tree is so young that you're still not even sure whether or not it's going to thrive in a new setting. You know, so, you know, one of the things I often tell young people is just make a decision and live with the decision for a little bit. Don't run from the decision just because you don't see the initial benefit, because long term, the hard times in the front can develop some real good, strong roots long term. And I think that that's one of the things that, you know, I want to see more of in the Black community. I want to see people making mistakes and learning how to live through their mistakes. Because these kids, when the homes are broken, it's not easy. I mean, Pastor Eddie, you are proof that it is doable. But there's a lot of other young people that have also been hurt through this process, watching fathers walk away, watching the divorces, watching the economic depth or dearth that happens as a result of that, watching the uncomfortability in the church setting where now, you know, mom's sitting over there and maybe dad is sitting over there, or maybe neither of them are in church anymore. You know, the complexities, you know, and we're back to talking about systems again. Systems are not just, you know, what the man is doing in the government. The systems are our family systems as well. So, anyways,
can I say something, just Orlando? I know you have to. Go ahead. Just on a word of encouragement to this younger generation. I remember seeing this guy post something on Instagram. It was deep, and he said he sat talking with an older. And the older was talking about this generation. They've got no commitment. They're this, that, you know what I mean? Just really killing the generation. And he said, you know, I find it funny. If a farmer plants a crop and the crop doesn't bear, the farmer doesn't actually blame the seed. The farmer looks at the ground. The farmer looks at the conditions. The farmer looks at everything that he made possible for this tree to grow. Because if the tree didn't grow, the plant didn't grow, it's not the seed's fault.
Right.
It's the farmer's fault because it didn't. And then he made the point, like, if we keep on saying this is what we are as a generation, what did you plant us in? What did you plant around us? And for me, it struck me deeply, you know what I mean? Because we're at that stage where we're the oldest now. You know what I mean? Yeah, like all of a sudden, our parents are like, nah, they've passed the baton. They're like, nah, we don't want it anymore. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to talk to this generation. You know? And so now we are the oldest, and we really, rather than just the young people this, the young people that, all right, well, what ground are we planting them in?
That's right.
What conditions are we, how are we watering them? Where do we plant them? You know what I mean? If we plant them in conditions, you know, those conditions can't grow nothing. You can't grow nothing in that condition. Are you going to plant them on a brick and expect them to be a flower? A seed can't grow on a brick, you know? And so I think it's our, you know, and even within our churches, you know, just the point that you was making, Dre, if our children can't fail and fail well at church
Mhm.
and in church, and where they're going to fail, man.
Right.
Because it's supposed to be the place of grace.
That's
Where it's supposed to be the place that
Mhm.
they fail, and we say, boy, you made a right mess of that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, I said, come on, let's try again.
Yeah.
Kids should never want to leave that kind of environment.
That's right.
Because it's an environment of grace, patience, truth,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Accountability, but it's also a place of support, a space of expectation that propels them forward. And they're not afraid to fail here. This is the one place I can fail and understand that if I fail here, I'm going to be caught.
It'll be all right. Yeah.
There was. Go ahead.
That has to be the place. Sorry, Orlando. Go.
No worries. There was a quote or an idea that someone had mentioned that the goal of parenting is friendship. The goal of parenting is friendship. And so they were saying that from 1 to 5, it is those years where you just tell them that the reasoning for the child is not there yet. And so when you get to 5, between 5 and 12, you're now telling them the reason behind the yes and the no, the do and the don't do. Right. And then once you get to the 13 to the 18, this is where you have to be hands off, but also be present enough for them to make their mistakes.
Yeah.
And so as they're making those mistakes, you're there in the background, because now home is that place where they can make those mistakes and be able to think about it, so that when they get to 18 plus, they're ready. And whatever you want to teach them, you can't. You've already done it. So they're at that 18 where they're now using their own choice as to what they want to do. But now the goal is that now you're friends with them, that they would choose to come and be with you even when they don't have to.
Right.
They will come home and hang out with you as parents, even when they could be somewhere else, but they love to be in that space. They love, because they've grown up in it.
That's right.
And so, for me, that was very eye-opening, because even, and what they had mentioned was a lot of times as fathers, we don't really we're leaving it to moms to be able to do all of the raising. And then once it gets to 16, 17, 18, we're now trying to exert on what to do. But they're already at the stage.
Good luck with that one.
So we're coming late to the game. And so as we are talking about this whole fatherhood and parenting, I think there's a lot of gems that have been shared, within this session today. So
I feel like parenting like the kingdom, I don't know if parenting is always about being right, but I know parenting is always about being present.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the same with the church and the kingdom. The church ain't about being right.
Right.
How can it be when it's full of sinners?
That's right.
But the church is about being present. The kingdom comes to be present.
Yeah.
The kingdom comes to be present. And because the kingdom is present, we figure out how the kingdom now is relevant to our situation. And just like Alana was saying, if we create that space, especially, and our kids need that space, because when they get into their 20s and things collapse around them, like they pick up the phone, Dad, how you doing? I'm not doing good, I'm coming. Like, come. You want them to do that.
Correct.
You don't want them going anywhere else. Like, you're like, come, man. Mom's got some food, come. You know what I mean? You want that place to be the place where, when all else fails, and because everything else fails, all right, let me go back to that oasis, catch myself and think again. That one place of non-judgment, that one place of support, that one place of prayer, that one place, that familiar, and then go back again. And I feel that I feel like if we do that as far as homes are concerned, then we're doing good.
Yeah. Wow, man. Wow.
We're being good fathers. We're being good fathers. We're being good parents. We're being good husbands.
Yeah. It's been a rich conversation. I don't know why we always try to keep this to an hour. It never ever stops at an hour. But it has been rich. Pastor Martin had to jump into another meeting as he had tonight, but he was appreciative of lending his voice and part of his journey as well. Pastor Lawrence, the same. But yeah, I just want to thank both Pastor Andre, Pastor Eddie, for always being willing and supportive just to jump on and just kind of share together. And whatever experiences that we have come through and gone through, we're able to share that with our brothers and their families out there. So thank you so much. Truly appreciate it.
Especially after the last time, Orlando knows how much I was just hurt. You was breaking the bromance, man. When I didn't turn up, I was crying for days.
You know what? I need to learn how to read.
Do you notice that I had to put it in the evening time to make sure? I had to put it in the evening.
That only happened
because of you, Dre.
Off the hook. Please don't be like that, man. Like,
Andre, man.
I'm so sorry, man. Look, I'm sorry. It won't happen again.
All good, man. All good.
Hey, just 20 seconds each. What is one final word that you want to just encourage our men before we close off today?
Be present. Be present. As difficult as it is, learn to be present. Learn to love through being present. That's me. That's my word. And God bless you what you do. Those of you who are raising your own, and those of you who are raising somebody else's children, but you're committed to that woman, you're committed to that family. Kudos.
Yeah.
Trey? I think the only thing that I want to say is don't beat yourself up. There's no book for this thing. And a lot of the people that are out there trying to make it look like it's perfect, they're lying. They're lying. It takes work. It takes time. And ultimately, and again, Pastor Eddie, you took the words from me. It's about being present, even when it comes to fixing stuff. If you're not there, you can't fix the complexities of your parenting, of your relationship. So being present, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
You've got to be there to make a difference one way or the other. And if you're not there, you never get the time back. Never. I haven't met anybody that has been able to find a way to get 20 years of absenteeism. Yeah. It's so much harder to come back. Better you just do it while you're there, present.
For me, it'll be patient. Oh man, just be patient. It's one of the hardest things to have when you are parenting. But yeah, just be patient through this whole process and this whole journey. Like Andre was saying, we don't have to be perfect in this whole thing, but we just have to be present. So Eddie said, be present. And Andre said, what would you say, Andre?
Be practical.
Be practical. And for me, it's just be patient. There we go. The 3 Ps.
Yeah, man, the 3 Ps. I knew you wanted.
So we're going to ask Andre if you can just close us off with a word of prayer and close it off for today.
We do thank you, Lord, for the time that Pastor Orlando, Pastor Eddie, Pastor Perez, and Pastor Lawrence, we just wanted to share. I don't think any one of us has said that we're perfect. If we spent more time on this conversation, we would all be able to uncover the flaws that we all have. But we're committed to our families, committed to being patient and practical, and what is the last one?
Present.
Thank you. My prayer is, Lord, that you would continue to be with the fathers, regardless of what background they come from. We all get to choose what our families will look like in the present tense, whether we're married or single, fathering or not. Some of the best fathers have never had a biological child, and they have raised literally dozens of children.
Yes, Lord.
And so, Lord, whatever our experiences may be, help us to just make a difference wherever we're planted, because we do ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. God bless everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Eddie.
Don't forget your baseball
over there. It's evening out this way, but we are out.
If you come on this thing without your baseball hat next time, you're in trouble.
I'm coming on, man. I'm coming on my baseball cap low right here, man.